I'm going to introduce the next panel and then turn it over to Sandy Skees. We're so delighted to have her here. I talked earlier about how complicated and complex sustainability can be to communicate. And actually, Sean Carroll from Jackson Family Wines mentioned that he had heard Sandy speak and that she is full of great advice on how to talk about sustainable brands and purposeful brands. And so she's going to talk a little bit about her book and some tips for us all. And then we have a great panel that is going to talk a little bit more in depth about how we really can tell stories in a compelling way with our content, with our visits, hospitality, etc. So really looking forward, and we'll be taking notes because we all need some tips on this. Thank you.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Sandy Skees. I'm going to shamelessly plug my book, Purposeful Brands. It's my credentialing of myself. I've actually been doing sustainability consulting and communications for almost 20 years now. And I've done it for across all sectors. Some of the companies I've worked with are Ben & Jerry's, Visa, State Farm, Dick's Sporting Goods, General Mills. I work with a Simply Organics spice company. And so regenerative ag, food and beverage, these are categories I understand. And the challenges that I've heard all day today are exactly the same challenges that I see across every sector that I work with. When I got into sustainability about 2 decades ago, I've been doing brand marketing communications for 3 decades, but I left. I had one of those moments. It was I can't launch one more useless product or one more vapid marketing campaign. I need to be doing something that matters. And I got into sustainability because for me, this was the beautiful intersection of innovation, purpose, and commerce. And so I want to just give you sort of my philosophy, my theory of change around why sustainability matters and how it's connected to purpose. So let's start with the broad world we live in right now. There are these new influences, and I don't think any of us should understate the pressures that our businesses are feeling in this poly-crisis world that we're living in, right? We have global political and conflicts and wars. We have the climate chaos that we've all experienced, and it's everywhere in the world. And businesses used to be able to set a strategic plan and occasionally deal with risk mitigation, sort of enterprise risk episodes. Those episodes are coming constantly. And so there is no normal anymore. There's no sort of planning because in many ways we're always reacting. And so just park that reality that we all live in. The second is the rise of audience power. And as a lifelong communicator, this is something I've been paying attention to. First of all, you have more audiences than just your customers, the people who buy your products. I keep trying to train myself not to use the word consumer because consumer is not an identity that any of us really want. And consumption, if you remember, was a lung disease. Your lungs filled up with fluid, you died. So somehow us marketers turned consumption into a thing. So I'm trying to say the people who drink your wine, the people who buy your product, they're one of your audiences, but so are your employees, so are your investors, your suppliers, your retail customers, your partners. All of them are audiences who have very specific ideas of what you should be doing as a business and how you should be contributing to the world, and it's changing. Or, as I write in my book, purpose is actually a rephrasing of what was always true for businesses who've been around for hundreds of years. So how do we define purpose? How do I define purpose? It's a business strategy. It is not a campaign. It's not a marketing slogan. It's not a strategy like a 5-year plan. It is an enduring commitment to the commons, and it's using all of your corporate resources in service to some greater good while delivering business value. And let me tell you what I mean. It's the materials you source, the people you hire to work in your fields, to work in your facilities. It's every bit of the resources that you have at your disposal can become a lever for creating good in the environment or creating good in society. And I don't think any of us stop and take a step back and think about that. So the money you spend to buy materials, the choices you make about how you pay people, the choices you make for what you make, where you make it, where you might be leaving it out. This is a conversation I have with retailers and grocers is, are there food deserts where you don't have a store and you're leaving whole communities out? And that's a choice you're making. And then it's like, what do people do with your product when they're finished with it? You have an ability to leverage all of those levers in service to some greater good. I mean, all of us know we have to take care of our own front yard. Keep it tidy, keep it neat. Although now it isn't lawns, it's let your lawns go wild. But in any case, we're taking care of our own front yard. But there's a bit of the commons that we all have a responsibility to. So what do I mean by the commons? The commons are all these things that all of us depend on, but none of us own. Clean air, clean water, a fertile and healthy soil, a functioning society, culture that works, art, beauty. These are all the commons, and any one of your companies can make a commitment to making that a little better. Not everything, just a piece of it that you're going to make a commitment to. And what I like to tell people is if you go back to your founder's story and you remember why whoever created your company, it was, I have an idea. I can make this thing. It's going to make people's lives better. It's going to make their celebrations better. There's a reason why you founded the company the way you did, and that's where you go looking for your purpose, which you want to articulate. A lot of people ask me, what's the difference between purpose and ESG and sustainability? Purpose is intention. It is the verbalization, the admitting that we are going to commit to some greater good in the world. And here's how we're going to express it. It's who you are. It's the why you are who you are. As my colleague, Callie Pitchell, I always use a credit my quotes, but as Callie says, when you know who you are, you know what to do. Take the time to define who you are and what your purpose is. Now, purpose is that greater good, that part of the commons you're going to take responsibility for, that part of the commons that you are going to improve, nurture, take care of. Maybe it's just soil quality throughout the world, your own yard, your own vineyards for sure, but then how do you export that to other places, other industries? I work in many different commodities. We work with the almond board. All of restoring soil is a big deal in agriculture. Can you participate beyond your sector out into the world? That's what purpose is. But it gets operationalized through sustainability, which is a strategy. And this, I think a lot of people equate sustainability with environmental, but sustainability in its truest sense is the interconnection and interdisciplinary approach to your environmental inputs and outputs, your social inputs and outputs, and growth. I'm going to get to governance and ESG in a minute, but true sustainability is environmental, social, and growth. It's the balancing of, it's going to cost us this, the environmental or social implications. I loved the story of, we started paying our workers overtime after 40 hours because that's just what we did. And now we're an anomaly in the industry. You can lean into that as very purposeful. That was a purposeful, intentional decision. That's a social sustainability program. And then the environmental, the social, and what happens when you are always calibrating the work across those three dimensions. You drive brand value and loyalty, and you drive impact on the world. So that's how I look at sustainability. What is ESG? About a decade ago, I saw a presentation from the S&P 500, and they were presenting at a conference. It was a financial conference. And there was always the mythology that any company that had environmental goals was a tree hugger, and we could just see profits kiss those goodbye. Like, yeah, they hug the trees, they take care of the whales, but they're not delivering profit. Well, S&P started studying companies that had sustainability strategies. And what they realized is these companies were outperforming the market by about 5%. Why? Because they were carefully managing their resources. Now, 10 years ago, this was a big deal, right? I mean, we'd all heard you have a sustainability strategy, and environmental or social, because it was done for PR purposes. It was done to make your employees feel good. But what S&P was able to prove was that it was actually driving greater return, greater value, outperformance for publicly traded companies. Well, once Wall Street learned, wait, what? There's a different dimension I can plug into my algorithm that can help me create portfolios that perform better. Okay, I need this ESG data. I need to know environmental, social, governance. I need it all the time. And that's why you saw this flurry of attention around ESG. It's because Wall Street was driving, oh, wow, these are dimensions of your business that I want to understand. I want you to talk about them. I want to hear about it. This has evolved now, and it is beginning to bifurcate a little bit into disclosure and regulatory requirements. It is because your environmental dimension and your social dimension, diversity, equity, inclusion, pay equity, whether you keep employees, how you treat them, all of that, these two dimensions are material to your business. And so from a disclosure perspective, this is becoming an expectation. So we're starting to see some of that ESG sustainability information flowing over here into disclosure. But the part that I'm the most excited about, and has always been excited about, is the narrative and communications potential to drive brand value, to drive loyalty amongst those audiences that you depend on, to allow your environmental and social and market performance to be a holistic story that you're telling. And it's not sitting over here in your siloed sustainability report, but it actually becomes a way you talk about who you are and why you do what you do. So at Porter Novelli, which I lead our global purpose and impact group, and we're a communications and consultancy, and we study purpose. We've been studying purpose for, we've been doing research in the field for over 20 years. And it's mostly to find out, what do the people who buy your products think about purpose as a driver of brand value, as a driver of your brand as a intrinsic and intangible asset. So we ran some research last summer, and we're running it again this summer. We do it every year, and it forms our purpose priorities report, where we rank about 250 companies by their brand value in 3 categories: purpose, performance, and quality. And there's 16 factors that we look at in each of those 3 buckets. But what I want to spend some time on is the purpose component. So what consumers believe, and this has been changing year on year, and the percentages keep ticking up. 86% believe you have to operate in a way that improves my life. And I apologize for using the word consumers, but that's the way my research team uses it. 65% say you have to demonstrate that you're following through on your promises to people, planet, and society. And this data point's not on there, but 70% say, and I want to hear about it all the time. So no, it isn't just in your sustainability report. It should be on your website for sure. It should be on your labels and on pack. It should be on your shelf talkers. It should be in your socials. It should be all over. It's part of the story of who you are. You know, I like to say that 4 years ago, all of us became amateur epidemiologists, did we not? We studied spray patterns and contagion, and we knew everything about viruses because it mattered to us. That created a behavior that has stuck, which is people do get into the weeds of climate because now they're living with climate chaos, and now they're concerned, and so they're digging for information. 82% say they want you to encourage them. They want you to encourage them in supporting social and environmental issues. Again, back to your purpose. When you know who you are, you know what to do. When you can articulate your purpose internally, every employee can, you know why you're here. It helps you when your customers, when the people who buy your wine are expecting you to take a stand on a social issue that's emerging. I spend every day consulting with executives who want to know, should we make a statement about this conflict, this disaster, this milestone or commemorative month that this community, this minority community cares about? And the answer is, if it's participate in those that are true to your purpose. And some things you'll participate in and others you won't. But it helps you have a framework for deciding where and how to show up. The people who drink your wine also want you to they want us to fix the planet. They're saying that 61% are more concerned now. And we did this after the white hot summer we all had last year. And we saw the number tick way up because the heat, the chaos, the weather chaos, everyone understands that something is profoundly different. And we think, we're not sure government can fix it. We know that nonprofits and NGOs can do some, but it's the businesses that we also expect. And in many ways, they trust brands more. 76 agree that companies should have programs that address environmental sustainability. And I will say that this research is US Gen Pop. We can break it down by all the generational cohorts, by regions, et cetera. And it is true that these percentages tick up. 84% are ready to adopt environmentally friendly behaviors. And that's even higher when you skew for millennials and Gen Z. So yes, the younger generations are more concerned. They expect more from brands and they're ready to do more. But here's something I want to share with you. And it's so important to a lot of the things I've heard today. You're doing great work on the farm, in the vineyards. You're doing great work in your facilities. But I was curious to know, what are people ready to do? Because actually, sustainability and purpose sit in two categories. There's your own operational changes, and then there's culture change at scale, which means we need people to start doing things differently. We need them to buy wine in cans. We need them to not think a heavy wine bottle is the only signal of quality wine. We need them to change their behaviors. So on 4 different behaviors, I'll show you in the next slide, what I was trying to get at is, where's the readiness? 6% have said, I'm not ready, I'm not doing anything different. I'm living my life. That's the way it is. That is a stubborn 6%. When we asked about concern about the environment and global warming, the same 6% said, I'm not concerned. I don't see it as a thing, which actually that percentage, 6%, thinking global warming isn't real or that it isn't a concern or that environmental sustainability isn't important. For the 2 decades I've been doing this, that percentage was always 20 to 22, 23%. This was the first year I saw it drop to single digits, which means everybody's concerned. If only 6% are unconcerned, 6% unwilling to do anything, we've got some readiness, some softening in the consumer market that I think I want to talk about. 15% say, I'll buy a sustainable or a green or a purposeful product. I'll buy one. And that purchase intent we've talked about, the premium, the price premium, we all are beginning to unpack what that is. But look at this middle number. The middle number says, I'm willing to adopt a mix of simple behavior changes as a means to becoming a more sustainable living person. 54%. I have never seen a number that high. That's almost half of the US Gen Pop. They're willing to change their behaviors. I tell marketers this all the time and brand strategists who think, I can't talk about sustainability. My consumers don't care. They care. So how do you talk about it? We tracked it again. That top number is 54% say I'll consider some behavior changes, but we were asking them specifically, go circular, right? Will I keep reusing? The other is nature friendly. I'm going to look for products that have nature friendly. Think durable. We were asking questions of, would you get something repaired? Would you refill something? Like, we were looking at very specific behaviors moving up the continuum. The easiest to explain was plants. 13% said, I'm not going to stop eating meat ever. In fact, I'm not changing anything about my diet. 51% said, I'm willing to swap meat for a plant in a meal or two. All the way to only 3% are going to go vegan. But you can see what we were trying to get at is, What are you willing to do as the consumer where my brand can meet you halfway? So what I'm telling you is 54% are ready for you to tell them how they might work with you to solve a problem. They're ready. The trick is, how do we talk about it? Last year, NYU Stern, their School of Sustainable Business, did a really interesting study on messaging, and I encourage you to go to NYU Stern and their Sustainable Business group and find this research. But what we learned is, the first thing is, of course, it has to perform as expected, and your first claim should always be, it tastes great, or, that's what the category expects, right? But then you can layer on a second message and a third message. For example, no animals were harmed, or there's reduction of chemicals in the soil. But here's the trick. You always have to connect it to the individual benefit. So if you have a cork that's made with ocean plastics and it means that the waters are better for all of us, you want to connect it to the human benefit, not let the data just speak for itself. That's on your marketing communications. I'm going to echo what Liz said earlier, which is, please put a QR code. Please have a site on your website, a place on your website where the sustainability, climate, or DEI nerds can go deep on what you're actually doing, because they want to know. And so from a communications perspective, what you're doing from a social and environmental perspective matter to your constituents, but you never know which of the things you're doing are going to be the issue they care the most about. I heard a great talk from a woman who does sustainability communications for AT&T. And, like all good communicators, we want that one perfect message, the one that everybody's going to love. So they were testing, and there was no one message. And then what happened is they tested, instead of A/B testing, they did A plus B and then B plus C. And what they found, which is what NYU Stern proved, is that two messages are better than one. And you never know which combination is going to work, because for some people, the way you work with water is going to be their issue. It's going to be their purchase driver. For others, do they pay their farmers well? For others, it's going to be, I want to know that the board and the executive team are diverse. That's what I care about. And so if you aren't communicating about all of this in an upfront, transparent, ongoing, consistent way, you're guilty of what I call green hushing, not greenwashing. And green hushing is more destructive to you because you're not getting credit for the good work that you're doing. And many of you are doing good work in pockets. If you're here, it's because you already most likely have a cohesive sustainability strategy. But for a lot of the companies that I'm seeing now, I'm having the same conversations I was having 15 years ago, because they're just getting started, but most of them have been doing something. And so it's about knitting that all together. So let's get into purposeful storytelling and why do it. And I'm going to go back to, take the time to articulate your purpose, the why you are here, not your mission, which may be making, wonderfully tasting wine that's good for the environment. I'm talking about your purpose, the why. But why do that? Is it because you believe this planet needs to endure for generations to come? And then what part of the planet are you going to protect and nurture? It can't be all of it. Focus. Your purpose can be focused. And oh, by the way, it can be roughly the same territory as someone else in your category, because we don't need to elbow each other out of the way to fix the planet and make society whole and healthy. So when your storytelling is connected to your purpose, that red thread that runs through everything, it multiplies the momentum. People know who you are. They know why you're showing up. They understand what you're trying to do from an environmental and social perspective, and they're ready to meet you. I showed you 54% are ready to meet you where you're going, where you're headed. We always ask our respondents in our survey, like, what kinds of behaviors are they going to do when it comes to brand love? And when they understand your purpose, this is what they tell us in the last data. This is from last year. 64%, if I understand your purpose and I'm aligned to it, I'm ready. 64% said, I'll try a new product from you because I'm going to take that trust I have and that alignment around purpose, and I'm going to transfer it to this new product. I don't have to know much about it except that it's your product. Conversely, if I find that you're not living out your purpose, if you're not delivering on your sustainability strategy, if you're not showing up authentically, I'm going to switch to a brand that is more aligned to my purpose. Again, these are Gen Pop numbers. This is across all generational cohorts. And again, it skews more with the younger you go. This is a number I love, the net. Who doesn't love a net promoter score, right? As a measure. The net promoter score, if I align with and feel a sense of participation in your purpose, I'm going to recommend you. And again, this is why articulating your purpose is so important, because it's bigger than you. It's bigger than your sector, and it creates a sense of engagement and a welcoming to your customers and your audiences that creates a sense of belonging. It's why I will recommend you. And then lastly, what company doesn't have a misstep? You know, a product recall, something happening at a factory, you know, news of some pay inequity amongst certain levels in the company. Those are all mistakes. You know, we tried this technique when it came to carbon mitigation and it just didn't work. We're trying something else. 62% said, I'll forgive those missteps, because I believe fundamentally that they're authentically working towards a sense of purpose. I've got 3 case studies in my slides. I'm going to just do this one with Sephora, but then I want to get to my panelists because these are the true case studies in your sector, and they've got really interesting dimensions on how they're living out their purpose and their sustainability in communications. Here's a great example of social sustainability. Sephora got in big trouble. They had some racial profiling happening in some of their stores, and they realized that they had a diversity, equity, and inclusion problem. So the first thing they did was inside out. You walk your talk. Don't talk about what you're doing. Don't tell, show. And so first they trained their employees. They did massive, sort of shut the stores down. They did a lot of massive training around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And then rather than themselves being the spokesperson for their renewed commitment to DEI, they hired and trained their influencers to be that voice. So by having the summer of 2023, 70% of their creators identified as a person of color, and they had 14% Spanish speakers, and they had a wide range of gender and non-binary spokespeople. So my last sort of my case study to you here is, before we get into the specifics, in store and on shelf, is your messenger is a message. Think about who you use in your storytelling, because who you choose to highlight, use, let them tell the story for you, speaks volumes. So I want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to turn it over to my panelists. They're going to go through their stories of how they're creating sustainability storytelling in their operations. And then I think we're going to try to just open it up for questions, because I feel like we haven't gotten a lot of audience questions. So we're going to dive right in. Thank you for your time. Let's get into it. Oh my gosh, I forgot to introduce my speakers. Look at me. I've failed as a moderator. I can tell you right now. My panelists, I am pleased to be sitting next to and having shared lunch with and spent some time today and on the phone earlier, is Emily Ely. She's marketing director at Wolfer Estate Vineyard. She's one of our, I think we decided, with the exception of our global folks, you are the farthest away contiguous US representative here. So go Montauk, right? We have Richard Morley, who's director of First Pour, and he does sustainability storytelling, and he's got a lot of good examples to show you of how this plays out in your sector. And then finally, Ann Wallace, director of sustainability sales integration for Jackson Family Wines, and she's going to tell us what it's like to take the sustainability story to your retail partners. Over to you, Emily. My apologies for not introducing you.
No, thank you so much. So a little background on me. I've been with Wolfer for the past 5 years. I prior to that was in mostly marketing agencies. So I worked across many different industries, including finance, pet care, automotive, which all struggle with this same issue. And so when I joined the Wolfer team, it's been such a great journey to be able to apply a lot that I've learned and take kind of an outside perspective and bring it to the brand. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about storytelling specific to our winery experiences. So when people come and join us in the Hamptons. So we are a vineyard in Sagaponack, New York. We're on Long Island, which is the South Fork. We have 175 acres with vines, stables, a tasting room, and our wine stand, which is, as you can see, the upper corner picture, a little bit more casual environment. We were founded by Christian Wolfer in 1988. He was, when he came to the United States and landed in the Hamptons, he purchased this as, it was originally a potato farm. And then started planting vines because he saw a neighbor do it and he was like, why not? I think this looks like fertile land. Let's give it a shot. And so brought on board Roman Roth, who's our winemaker, in 1991. He's been with us ever since, celebrating 30 years with Wolfer. And we started making rosés in 1993. So today, celebrating 36 years of winemaking, we have a fantastic leadership team. So that includes Mark and Joey, who are brother and sister, who took over the business from their father. They all bring such a different dynamic to the table, and I think that's what makes us unique. Mark is our chief strategy officer, Joey is our chief brand officer, and then Roman was made partner when they took over. So he's an integral role as winemaker and a big decision maker as well. We make wine in 4 countries, and we also have made, such a dedication to rosé and the big movement of rosé. We started making it, in 93. It wasn't the most fashionable, trendy thing. And so we've pushed and stuck with it, and we're going to continue to stick with it, even if, the trends change. It's just a part of who we are, and it's a part of our story. And Summer in a Bottle has just been such a great brand identity for us. And so it's also helped us innovate. So Summer in a Bottle is celebrating 10 years, and we have made some additions to that line, as well as into the non-alcoholic and low alcohol space. So Spring in a Bottle is our non-alcoholic sparkling. We take rosé seriously. It's no joke. So it's something that is it's a lifestyle for us, and I think our consumers resonate with that. It's something that we're trying to build as a community. It's not just what people could say is the fun, the party aspect of it. It's also building people who genuinely enjoy life and have that same passion for what we do. And so we have to know a lot about our consumer, and we want to learn more about them. And we have a fairly female millennial focused customer, and they come through our doors, and we try to get as much information as we can on them, and whether they're engaging with us on our website or on social or wherever it is, there's power in first party data. And so this is our, these are our people. These are the people that care most about us. And so what can we learn about them? And we've done quite a lot of work building out personas and trying to figure out, what does this audience want most from us? And that leads us to, what are they doing? How are they engaging with Wolfer? And we know that that's no longer a linear experience. It's way more complicated than that. You're seeing our wine on shelf. You're seeing our wine on a wine list. You're seeing it on social. And we're going to talk more about those experiences as well. So how is it possible that we can have all of these messages and juggle all of these attributes like low alcohol, low calorie, sustainable? Like, what comes first? What's the highest priority, and what's going to get them to become a loyal customer in the end? And so what I'm going to talk about now is just more about integrating sustainability as part of our on-premise experiences. And I think that is such a tool for us when you think about that journey. It's for me, it's like the golden ticket. A lot of other brands and things you see out in the market, they don't have what a lot of us have, which is a physical space to come see. And there's no better proof point than walking into our doors and our tasting room and getting into the field. And we love to spend as much time as we can in the vines. And so when we bring the customers with us on that journey, they get to see it firsthand. So sustainability, we've been certified by the Long Island Sustainable Wine Growing Organization for 11 years. So that is a 200-point criteria of farming best practices that we have to pass. And I think sustainability, a lot of what we've talked about is it goes so far behind just the certification. It's into every decision that every team member makes. So from a marketing standpoint, that could be anything from what sweatshirts are we buying and where are they coming from for our merch in our boutique, all the way to, there's no plastic on premise. And so what are we using when they're buying something at the wine stand, like a cheese board, or what cheese are we prepping and who's prepping it? Like it's every decision that we're trying to look at. And so it's important that remains at the core of what we do. And we practice, these principles to try to help guide us to bring those to life. And so one that I think is really important is tailoring the message for the moment. And so when you come to Wolfer and you get to experience it firsthand, you may be with us for 10 minutes and you're just buying a case of wine and heading out the door. And that's not a lot of time to convince something of anyone. It's what do you want to get across the table? And so what are we doing to really make sure that some people might be more interested in taking a selfie in the vines, and some people might be more interested in having a full 2-hour seated experience. And so you have to be able to read the room and educate our staff members to do the same. We talked a lot about being authentic, and that seems like it's straightforward, but it's actually a lot harder than it sounds. Find what's authentic to you and stick with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying a few different things and seeing what sticks, but it's helpful to have faces to names. We've got an amazing leadership team. They're physically in the tasting room all the time. Our guests are seeing them firsthand. And so we're able to share some of the behind the scenes stuff, and they're able to walk up right to our owners and say, hey, I saw you at the winery, or I see you sitting at the wine stand. Tell me more about where we are. And so it's a great way for us to just be fully ourselves. And then share what you know. This is a tricky one that I've obviously the last 5 years been trying to figure out how to do. There's a lot that customers want to know, and I don't want to make something off the cuff just because we think it's the right thing to say. It should come from us as naturally and progressive as we're trying to be with our sustainability. So like we talked about, it's going to be hard for us to, and it can be scary to share the stuff that is not going so well, or it's maybe not the prettiest, but I think sharing it is well worth it because people can appreciate that. And we talked about the younger generations being able to really just cut right through what you're saying, and they want to see the nitty gritty of it. So don't be afraid to share that. So it's a scale. So our experiences, as I mentioned, it's a scale. It could be something from the 5 minutes in the wine shop to a sunset session at our wine stand, a tasting room reservation, which is a little bit more of, we're getting that engagement with them, all the way up to our really more, experiences where people are coming to us saying, hey, we want to know a lot more about what you're doing. And so our tours and tastings specifically are tailored seasonally. So they shift, every 2 to 3 months. We obviously in the winter, we stay open year round. And for a community that's very focused on the summertime and our peak season, that's unique. We employ a lot of employees, and that's a thing that we pride ourselves on is keeping them throughout the year. And so our tours in the winter are all about the cellar, and you're down in the cellar with the winemaker, and you're getting to see our barrel room, and you're getting to see our wine library, and talking about more of that process as we're bottling. So they get to see that process. And then in the summertime, it's the ride around to the stables, and then you get to see our vineyard and you're walking through the vines, and you really are experiencing what we're doing sustainable firsthand. And then a new one that we've added the last year or so is our Taste of the Season experience, which is a 2-hour seated 7-course pairing menu, which is seasonally changed every 3 months. And we focus on only serving local purveyors. So a farm that's nearby that is making heirloom tomatoes, like that's going to be on the menu. And we're going to explain to you why that is such a amazing pairing with one of our wines. And it's coming from the same terroir, and it's, cut from the same cloth. So it's something that is a lot more time intensive, but those are the people that are most engaged. And so you have to be able to tailor that message throughout all of these different engagements. And then how we get there. We've talked a lot about these two things, but we are active in our community. It's about getting out there, doing as much as you can, seeing as many people as you can, being visible. It may sound like it's hard to say, hey, X company has donated so much, and you sound a little bit like you're bragging, but it's something people want to hear and they're interested in it. And I think it creates a really great halo effect. And I think the feedback we've gotten is the more that we do it and the more we're active in our community, our not only are our employees happy with it, but people that come find us, that's the way they're finding us, because they're out visiting and then they see us at an event and they're like, well, we have to stop at Wolford before we leave. And then I talked a little bit about our people, but we employ a lot of people year round. We try to do as much trainings as we can as possible. That's such a big point of that, tailoring the message to each experience, because if you can train your staff and they all know how to do that, that is a massive commendable achievement. And it could be through materials. We've got videos, we've got training booklets. We give them firsthand, it's we, not I, we're in this together. Let's all try to help each other out and describe as much as we can of what we're trying to do, but to give it a simplified message, and to be able to say, if you've only got someone for 2 minutes, what's the most important thing you can share? Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And now Richard.
Thank you very much. Oh, can you hear me okay? That better. I'll lean forward a bit. Thanks, Emily. That was great. That was wicked. So hi, everyone. My name is Richard. I'm the co-founder of First Pour. We are the wine world's leading social media agency. First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Sustainable Winegrowing Alliance and especially the California wine industry for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be part of such an important event for our industry. So thank you. Before we start, I wanted to give you a quick introduction to myself and to First Pour. So myself and my business partner, Laura Seal, left our full-time jobs at Decanter back in 2019 to launch First Pour, which is I guess kind of with the ambition of being help wine brands connect with international wine audiences in an effective way that delivers real life results. So since starting, we've launched multiple D2C brands. We've grown social media accounts ridiculously, newsletter databases. We've sold tickets to trade and consumer events, as well as run hundreds of influencer campaigns across the world. So that success, there we go. The success of that, we've kind of, and I guess the success for our clients has come down to 3 core principles that we apply to all of our work. The first one is that subject expertise. In our case, we're wine, very much so. So we only work with certified wine geeks. That's kind of like a philosophy. Number 2, impactful content. By that, we mean content that is catered to audiences, platform, and brand. And then number 3 is the social media know-how. And by that, we mean kind of, I guess, a content strategy, paid media, outreach, and more. I guess the one thing before the question that we need to ask is, do audiences really care? And this is when I'm talking about sustainability, that is. And more importantly, why should they care? Like we know from the data that Liz, well done, Liz, by the way, your presentation was awesome earlier. But what she showed earlier, that consumer purchases are influenced by sustainable practices. And here are a few more stats that I've found relatively interesting. I won't go through them on here because I think we've had so many stats already. But it's clear that sustainability impacts consumer behavior, and consumers are willing to choose brands that are sustainable over other ones that aren't, and pay more for goods that are sustainable. So it's your job as the brands to make sustainability matter to those consumers in order to then influence them to buy your products. So this here is a slide that we've created, which kind of analyzes the use of hashtags on Instagram. So yes, hashtags are not a direct measurement of sales. They're not a measurement of reach or engagement. But what they do give us is a litmus test of the general levels of interest. And I think it was interesting because you can kind of compare these with Liz's research earlier, and it kind of maps out quite similarly here. But what, for instance, we're seeing that the hashtag wine is, in today has had 77 million posts. If we use that as a benchmark to measure the popularity of wine, and you kind of compare it to the different hashtags that we've got up here. So champagne, for instance, 17.9 million, that equals about 23% of wine posts. Organic wine up there with 927,000, that's 1.2%, which when you think of it at 1.2 doesn't sound massive, but if you compare to, the use of Californian wine, Cabernet Sauvignon, that's pretty darn good. So whereas like if you compare sustainable wine down at 64K, which is 0.08%, it's right at the bottom. And what does that show us? It shows us that organic wine is a really well-established and it's got its messaging right. Like it's an easy to understand term. That means, evokes an attractive image of, I guess, kind of wine being produced without chemicals. That gives organic wineries a sense of power, a selling power, not a sense of power. And I think that also leads me on to my next point, which is the main challenges for communicating about sustainable winemaking. And I think this is something that has been brought to my attention on this trip as well as before. We've noticed it on social media, but it's interesting to see that most wineries that we visited have found the same thing. And it's that, sustainability is quite a broad and wide-ranging concept. It lacks impact when it's not linked directly to outcomes of specific practices. So yes, the breadth of sustainability is fantastic, but it's really hard for consumers to visualize what this means and why it matters to them. However, despite this, sustainability has got something up its sleeve, and that is consumer social conscience. Anyone who cares about society or about the environment cares about sustainability. And this is something that we as brands can tap into, and we can create a feeling of shared responsibility between brands and consumers. And by that, I mean, brands need to make sure they're making products sustainably, and the consumers, this is kind of what you were saying in your point, Sandy, they vote with their dollars and they opt for a sustainable future. So as long as we're able to communicate in a way that's authentic and engaging, the data suggests that people are ready and they're willing to join in on this kind of conversation. So we've developed 5 key questions that will help you hit your mark with social media. Why, who, where, what, how. By why, we're saying, why are you sharing this information? What are your key objectives and what outcome do you want? With who, we're talking about, who are you trying to target? Where are they based? Well, that's on to the third point, where. So where are your people, where are your target audience based? And that's geographically and on platforms. we've got the what. So what are you going to be sharing with people? And then the final thing, how you intend on sharing that message on social media. I'm going to delve into these now. Cool. So why? So why is from me? I'm very much a marketeer, and the why is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned before creating or launching any campaign. You need to understand what you want to achieve so that you can then know what success look like. So I guess kind of if your objective is brand awareness, then you want to be looking for things like reach and engagement on posts. And if your objective is for sales, then you're looking for things like return on investment or return on ad spend. And different, you measure these in completely different ways. Obviously, reach and engagement is much easier to measure than something like return on ad spend or return on investment. And I guess the great thing about social media is that it's super measurable. Everything you do can be measured, as long as you have key KPIs set. So here comes the who. So you need to have a clear definition of your brand identity and know what audience you want to be targeting. And you need to stay true to this when presenting sustainability. For instance, it makes no sense to start churning out in-depth jargon-filled posts when you're a fun, affordable wine brand appealing to an audience of casual wine drinkers. Equally, if you're meant to be an authority, which so many of you here are in your sector, don't oversimplify things. The content you create can patronize people if it's a well-informed audience. So if you don't hit the right audience or the right pitch, you could potentially alienate your potential clients. So where's quite an interesting one. We've pulled this report from Sprout Social. Basically, once you've identified your audience, you need to do some research into what platforms they're using. For instance, if we look at this graph here from Sprouts Social, if we look at, I guess, if we want to target millennial consumers, you're going to be wanting to focus on an area like Instagram based on where they're using it, what platforms they're using. But at the same time, if you want to reach a trade audience, you're going to be looking at LinkedIn. So your brand needs to consider expressing its identity differently on different platforms with distinct audiences. Each platform should have its own tone, language, and media choices. Oh, here are some examples. Sorry, I forgot. I meant to pull that up. For instance, you might be, if you're looking at sort of posting on Facebook or Instagram, you might have a more playful and informal approach. And that's reflected by the audience who wants that kind of content. Whereas if you're looking for, reaching out to potential, your suppliers or potential buyers, you're going to be wanting to focus on more informative, granular posts that are, for that largely trade audience. So treat these audiences differently because they are different. Now comes the what. So sustainability can often feel like a concept that is, I guess, by businesses for businesses. Many brands put a lot of time and effort, as a lot of people have done here, into these sustainability reports, which are absolutely super, important for sustainable development, transparency with both your team, trade partners, and peers. But what you're often failing to do, or what we're seeing is people often fail to do, is to break down that key information and put it into a way that's dynamic and digestible for the audience that you're trying to reach. Or consumers, which I'm not allowed to say. I hate to break it to you, but to be honest, consumers are not going to read a sustainability report. It's not going to happen. But what they can do, or what they might do, is read something that is clearly presented and that has a real good hook on it that makes the content relevant to them. So you need to give something they can clearly visualize. And I think the great power that social media has is that it's an image-led platform. So it's things like image and videos, and they are so useful at showing ideas and the work that you're doing. A picture says 1,000 words. Imagine how many a video does. And like, video is very much a format that social media at the moment is championing. So that is definitely, I would, especially if on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, you can't do anything else, but those are really getting more visibility. And I think one thing that is really important to remember when you're posting on socials is that people want the real thing. They want the behind the scenes. And given sustainability is all about being in an open book, your content should reflect this and be open with them as well. So I put here up an example here that Hoops Vineyard created. I wanted to get a Californian in here. They've done, what I love about this is that it's a really easy, digestible information that's perfect for the millennial consumer on Instagram. And it makes people feel that by choosing Hoops, that they're being part of something bigger. They're adding, and that this in turn adds value to Hoops' brand image. So now we move on to the how. Now it's all about kind of your posting strategy and how you're going to be tracking the results. So however you post, whether it's images, videos, you need to make sure that you're listening to your audience. So either through the comments that they're putting out or responding to your posts or the results or the reach that you're getting, you need to look at this, study it. If it's not working, you need to consider adapting it or changing your strategy. Look around, see what other companies are doing, see what other brands are doing that you like. It doesn't have to be within our industry. There are great fashion and brands, I guess, that are out there that are doing a great job on communicating. Let's look into that. And try and apply that information or try and apply that content style to your own work. And don't be afraid to change up your approach. I mean, social media is a great place where you can experiment. And a few examples that we've got up here are examples from stories that we created with Justerini and Brooks. They're one of the, I guess, oldest wine importers in the world. And we ran a story set of talking about sustainability to test the water to see how engaging it was. And, looking at those results, we could tell the type of content that works best for them and what best for more people engage with. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to other people for content. So look into digital creators for your brands and task them with communicating your sustainability messages in a way that's relatable. Their audience could become your audience by doing this. Yeah. And finally, once you found out what works from an organic perspective, I think you need to look into amplifying that content. At the moment, social media is one of the cheapest ways that you can advertise to a highly engaged audience. And when content performs well in advertising, it gets boosted even further because Meta's just trying to get people to see the content more often. So your return on investment for great content is, put that content to work is what I'm trying to say. So I've only had 15 minutes today. So I've tried to keep it as brief as possible because I feel obviously we've got to pass it on to the next
That's
speaker.
right. Thank you.
But thank you very much for your time. And if you want to reach out to me, please do. All
right.
Yeah.
All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Good? Okay. Let's see here. Hi, I'm Ann Wallace. I know that my title is a bit of a mouthful, and most of you are probably wondering what the heck is that? So I am going to tell you what it is and kind of how we got here. And if anyone has any better ideas for the title, we ran over this one quite a few times. We had to put sustainability and sales and how does that work? But before I get started, I just want to recognize my team that's in the room. Aaron Shriver-Stainthorpe, he's our Director of Sustainability. Sean Carroll, our Director of Communications. Alex Everson, who's our Sustainability Analyst. So everything that I'm going to show you today is a group effort and I've gotten a ton of help and support from my team. I'm the newbie on the team. I've only been in this position for a year, but I have been with Jackson Family for 17 years today, actually. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay, so sustainability and sales. Essentially, my job is to figure out how we use our sustainability initiatives to sell more wine. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? It was a really fun process getting here. And I'll tell you kind of a quick story. I was mostly in sales in various different positions throughout wine country. I live up in Healdsburg, but I've covered everything from Mendocino down through the peninsula. Then I was on the education team training all the salespeople. So that was really fun. I did all the new hire tours, people coming out to visit. I went out and trained people in their market. And then COVID hit and everyone is pivoting, right? Like I'm now stuck in my office, in my house, trying to figure out what to do. So we really as a team tried to figure out like how to make our resources more understandable, simplify them. And my passion has always been in sustainability. So I connected with Aaron and the sustainability team to see, all right, we have to simplify this messaging, right? Like sustainability is super sciencey and not everyone's brains work that way. So it's full of acronyms and statistics, and it's kind of hard to understand if you don't like really want to understand it really well, which most people, they have 50, 60 priorities every single day when you work for our company, as far as what sales, things you're gonna have to sell. And so we just had to figure out like, what do the salespeople need? So we met with each of the leads of every single sales division that we have. We have 7 of them within Jackson Family. And I thought we'd just get some ideas of, we want a 1-pager on this. Can you do a PowerPoint for this? Maybe give us a QR code. But no, and Aaron can attest, he sat in those meetings with me and it was pages and pages of ideas. And we thought, well, holy crap, this could be really, really fun. And, people like the idea of an ambassador program and like hold POS campaigns and let's do experiences at the estates. And we need so much training. And so an idea was born. And when you work for our company, ideas get heard really quickly. And we pitched it and they loved it. And so yeah, so here I am, which is really fun. But I needed to make myself more relatable to the sales team. And so I kind of asked these 3 questions when I'm wanting to engage. So one is, what do the sales teams need from us, from our team, to be more successful in the market? How do we communicate our message more effectively directly to our consumers? And then are there opportunities to engage with our account partners, the people that we sell wine to, who in turn sell wine to others? So the first thing that I want to talk about is just engaging the sales team. I do a ton of training, whether it's virtual or in person, both with our internal JFW team, with our Regal team, that's our distributor in California. We have distributors all over the country, as everybody does. And then our DTC estate team. So making sure that they understand our messaging, answering their questions, talking about how they can influence and, meet with their customers kind of where they are, and try to figure out how to share this message. So a big thing also that we did was just try to simplify materials. Sean helped me with a lot of this stuff here, but we did a piece on regenerative farming, all of our lightweighting efforts. The sales team wanted these also in horizontal format so they can dump them into PowerPoints. So we did that. We've got our certification list, infographics. So we're just trying to make things as easy as possible. Sometimes the sales team has like 90 seconds to introduce themselves to a buyer. What's the elevator pitch? So we can't make it too complicated. The other thing is that we have a podcast channel, which is pretty cool. I worked on this when I was on the education team. We launched it almost a year and a half ago now. And as of today, there's 63 episodes, and it's top down everything from, what does the harvest look like this year to, let's go through these wines with this winemaker, or food and wine pairing, things like that. But we took over the channel for the entire month of April. So we released 4 podcasts on sustainability and different topics. So that was just one way, like little 20, 30-minute conversations that our sales reps can listen to, driving from account to account, that just helps them tell the story a little bit. More statistics, consumer statistics. I'm not going to go through all these. You've heard a ton of them, but this is something that we created in tandem with a podcast about consumer trends and things like that we launched a couple weeks ago. Just I think that every single person can relate to some piece of our sustainability message, even if it's just from like a profitability standpoint, right? Like it's cheaper to do things this way. Or from a standpoint of you might not care, but the people you're trying to sell wine to do. So maybe you should start caring a little bit. And we hear that a lot around different parts of the country. There we go. So going to certification, we really wanted to get this message honed in with everybody that works for us and everyone in this room, something we're all really proud of, but that we do have 100% of our estate vineyards up and down the coast are certified sustainable. We have a pretty large portfolio, 23 wineries have logos on the back label, which is pretty cool. And we even have probably 5 or 6 that do and don't have them on. They are certified, but don't have them on the back label. So we're kindly nudging them in that direction. But as of yesterday, we have over 700 certified sustainable wines that we've released into the market. We're going to throw one hell of a party when we hit 1,000, huh?
Yeah.
But what we're doing is also, even if the certified logo is on the back label, not a lot of consumers turn the label around. I mean, if you watch people shop at a grocery store, nobody turns the bottle around. So how do we communicate on the front label? So whether it's committed to sustainability, certified sustainable. So we've got a number of wines that are featuring. And then retail point of sale. So this is a new campaign that actually is in print right now, but all of our brands have certain 3 or 4 month campaigns, and they've got their POS that gets probably more attention than anything else. About every display, we want it to have these glorifiers and these neckers, and we want, these pull toppers. But then that campaign gets done and then they do something else and it's surrounded by a holiday. I wanted something that we could do all year round. So I wanted it to be like celebrating sustainability every single day. And also to give our sales reps an option of sometimes a mass display for Kendall Jackson is going to need all of that stuff, all the, new NBA and WNBA stuff. And sometimes you're a Whole Foods next to a college and you really don't want to focus on that because that's not what your consumers are telling you that they want to buy. So something like this, I think, is really going to make an impact. We're hoping. We're doing a small run. We're going to communicate really well and just see which of these statistics is making more sense to consumers. And then maybe we can expand on the campaign as we go through. Liz, I think you said earlier, we're not doing enough in this space. We are trying. So hopefully you see that and hopefully people can start to kind of get inspired. This is not the first POS campaign. This is one that ran last spring. We've since tweaked the messaging a little bit based on updated statistics, but we did some seed neckers, which were pretty cool. You'll see that on the bottom left. You can plant in your garden. I think it was parsley, basil, and something else. So those were really neat. And then we ran this campaign over O&D. So really focused on the holidays and people kind of in the giving spirit, wine with purpose, rooted for good. What was great is that we had a lot of accounts pair with local nonprofit organizations. They had donation bins, food donation bins, or ran a coat drive in conjunction with this campaign. So that was really fun. Next, account engagement. So why am I sharing this? Because I don't want you to steal my ideas. So that was a comment I got from somebody else of why share this? Because, then this is the stuff that you do and we're going to take it. But I think it's important because I want to elevate the entire wine industry. And the more we get sustainability out there as an industry, whether you're a small winery, a large wine company, everything in between, the more your consumers are going to demand of your buyers, and the more the buyers are going to demand of their distributors, and the more the distributors are going to demand of us, right? So it's going to be a reverse chain reaction. There's so many gatekeepers between now, like between the winery and the end consumer, and you have to meet each one of them where they are. So in this case, our accounts were super excited to try to figure out to work with us now that they had somebody who was a salesperson, who was me, and I'd called on a lot of these accounts anyway, but now focused on sustainability. So how can we help them spread that message too? So we've got a lot of digital assets that are running. This is, if you go to safeway.com right now, you'll see this banner ad, which is pretty cool. with the #1 selling Chardonnay for 30 years in a row, which is exciting for us, to also be certified sustainable when you have a wine that's of that caliber and that production. And, smaller requests. Amazon Fresh has a handful of stores, but we made these cubes for them with La Crema, talking about our carbon emissions. And then a lot of times we work with other brands as well, creating an end cap for Target that's not just focused on Jackson Family. I think we have 2 of the 8 wines here, so. And lastly, it's really about show and tell, I think for me. Just wanted to create a company full of storytellers. That's what he had in mind when he created Regal Wine Company, which was the distributor in California. It was like the first of its kind. If someone said, "You're going to lose all your money. Why are you going independent?" And it worked out pretty well for him. But the reason was because he wanted storytellers to tell the story in the market. It's not just about the points you get. It's not just about like how much wine you make. It's not just about the kind of marketing, like cool new thing that you can put out there. It's about, we want you to kick the dirt and some people come and lick the rocks, and really like see the animals. I wrote down a couple notes from Sandy. I love that you were talking about stop talking purpose and start being purposeful. And I went to a conference with Shauna in October, and a similar context was that we have to stop asking humans to be more sustainable. And we need to start asking how we can make sustainability more human.
Yeah.
Right? So connecting with people where they're at, what they want to know about, maybe understanding what they don't. We can't always be about climate crisis. We can in this room, but out in the real world, it can't be all doom and gloom because people just shut off, right? They just completely turn off. And so we need to figure out how to make it personal and relatable and how we can invite them on this journey. And also how by supporting wines and other products that have a strong social impact and environmental impacts, like they are helping us support the initiatives that we do on the back end. So they can be a little tiny part of our story. And I think that's all I have.
That's
So
a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Let's
I'm
give
under
Anna a-
time.
All right, I'm gonna just say that this is to the first person who asks a question, get a free autograph book. And there we've got a hand raised. I've got a lot of questions, but I think you all probably have the real question. So our microphone person you might start throwing that across the room because how much time do we have for Q&A?
I think we have 15,
We
right?
have 15 minutes. Am I right about that? Great. We're going to just go until we answer every question any of you have for any of us. Please.
This was a very exciting panel. Thank you very much for every single one of you. Very interesting. I'm a professor at Sonoma State teaching marketing, and I focus on wine and sustainability. So this is like the topic I wanted to talk about. So thank you. I actually have a question for Anne. So obviously with Jackson Family Wines, you have millions of stories to tell. Have you had a chance to look at which story is more positively responsive to the consumers? I saw the post about like community, post about sunlight and water. What are the most impactful message, or have you had a chance to look at it?
I think, am I allowed to go back on this? Yeah. Are you talking about this one? Yep. Well, this is a new campaign that we've had similar messaging out there. I think it depends. You're comparing like apples, bananas, and like cucumbers, really all across the United States. So people in the West probably have more like of a connection to our water story or renewable energy. People in Texas might have a different idea. People in like urban areas probably respond to a different message than people in rural areas. So I don't know. I mean, Sean, I don't think we've really decided one is better than the other, but we've kind of tried to, and stop me if you have any insights on this, but I think we've really tried to take some of the messages that we find are really impactful within our organization, and that as we're talking to our local communities, and then using those out in the marketplace. And sometimes you might have a display that has all 4 of these. So we don't know what makes somebody buy a particular wine or not. So I don't have a good answer, but I think what you always have to do is find a way to take the statistic, which is great, and put a reasoning behind it. Like
Right.
Sandy
Yeah,
said.
that's
of-
right.
Oh,
Yeah.
We definitely as a company take sort of the New York Stern approach to their concern.
Yeah.
We don't like try to find one message and then just market the hell out of that one message like 12 months out of the year. Instead, it's really like all of these different categories of sustainability that we try to mix in there year round at different points. And then from there, like for me, it's all about repetition. So eventually all those different like diversity of messages, they all ladder up to the fact that we're a very sustainable company. And so that's sort of how we approach it. There are times where one message might work better. And so we will lean in on that in certain markets. If the year before we saw that it, spiked sales or whatever, like obviously we're going to go back to that because it's proven and it works. But yeah, overall, we're just trying to sort of diversify what we're talking about.
And I think you're getting at something, Sean, which is we can't simplify sustainability. And you said this, don't talk down to people. This is a complex, the entire environmental and social dimensions of a complex industry can't be simplified to a key message. The exciting thing is that you've got lots of stories to tell. Tell them all
mhm.
and tell them everywhere and use every platform.
I mean, we find from an advertising perspective that within a couple of weeks, you find that people get creative fatigue. You need to keep changing the content, changing the message, changing the way that you're delivering it. So absolutely, I agree.
You got a lot of content to pull from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Any other questions out there? Back in the back of the room? Oh, good. We have 2 mics.
Thank you very much for sharing all these great things. So talking about people, regular people, storytelling, because companies, we tell our customers what we do, the impact of sustainability to encourage them to buy our product. However, in my own experience, many people get discouraged because they said, well, yes, what can I do? There are 300 million people here. It makes any difference what I'm doing?
Huh.
So I'm wondering what we can do in the storytelling to encourage people and let them know that what they do matters, even one people matters.
Right. The despair of my single act won't change the world. So why do anything? That inertia is a powerful force. Anyone over there want to talk about how you combat that through storytelling?
I'd say there's elections that have been lost by like 1 or 2 votes, right? Or there's, I mean, if you get 10,000 people to move in one direction, you have a gigantic movement of
Right.
whatever you're trying to do. So some people just don't believe that what my mother is one of them, sadly. Like, why would I recycle? I just have like 4 bottles a week. Well, it's 4 bottles that don't, I mean, it's things like that. It's very hard to convince some people, but, I mean, it takes a few to then get a couple more and a couple more and it can become
Emily,
a
how about
a
you?
snowball.
You're
Yeah, I was
leaning
gonna say
forward.
The going back to being like the physical experience of being at the winery, like making it fun to engage. Like there should just be, this is fun. Why is it not fun? We joke all the time. Like I sit in an office that's at a winery and right out my door are people having a tasting, walking around outside, like we're all farmers here, and I'm crunching away on emails, but at the end of the day, it should be a lot of fun and that message has to trickle down some way. And so I think it's important that we make it approachable and understandable, but also some way to get your audiences and people through to you and engaging with you and being present. I think is important.
And I do think there's a role for industry groups to tell the cumulative story because small wineries plus big winemakers, the cumulative action has a footprint. So you are part of something bigger. We have other questions. I saw one right here.
Thank you. So I used to be freelance in marketing at Apple. and a really interesting experience. But when we did marketing, we always had to show the results. And so I feel like that's sort of missing from the conversation here. And I'm wondering if people want to start addressing it, like, are you having an impact, and what kind of impact, and what actions are the most impactful?
You're asking for the sustainability communications to include outcomes in what we've been able to accomplish? How many?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with all the things that are going on, but I haven't heard any like results.
Are you talking about sales, like
Yeah.
end results
Yeah.
of sales?
Right.
Okay, not just because we have the statistics was the end. Okay. I think it's really tough to quantify because sustainability is a hard message to spread authentically. You can't just take out, billboards and magazine articles and commercials on TV, like, because it's just, that's not how, it doesn't feel authentic, and we should be spending that money elsewhere, right? If we're practicing what we preach. So I don't really think there's a way to equate it to sales necessarily, because but any marketing campaign, I mean, you could look at a social marketing campaign and count the click-throughs, or for the La Crema tour that we have, it's the highest consumer engagement wine club sign up that we have in the organization across 25 wineries or whatever. And so we have like a 30% wine club conversion versus under 10% for everything else that we do. So maybe that would be a hard, a good data number. But I don't know, what do you guys think?
Richard, you were talking about setting your KPIs ahead of time.
Yeah, I was thinking that completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think it very much depends on what you're trying to do, whether it's brand awareness or sales. We work with a company called Senya. They're a winemaker in Chile. It's a project that was started with Tim and Darby and Eduardo Chadwick years ago. They're one of our clients. And, just from looking at reach and engagement metrics, the kind of posts that are to do with biodiversity or their organic work almost perform, let's say, twice as well as other posts, because they have a real geeky audience who are really into that kind of stuff. Like, people have an appetite for this content. And we know that, like, if we're going to talk about the fertilizer that they're using or go into deep depths into this, people love it and engage more with it. So I don't know if that counts as sustainability. I haven't got numbers off the top of my head, unfortunately, but you can also look, if you go onto any of the California wines Instagram pages, and you can look at the reels and you can see how many views posts have, and you can see that quite other, like the hoops one that we showed there, is one of our highest performing content because it is very clear and concise in their messaging.
Great. Thank you for that question. Others? We have one over here.
I'm afraid I'm not a marketer, but I look at this stuff and I think this is just incredible. But at the same time, I'm like, there's a real distinction between people who say they want to be involved and make sustainable decisions in their lives. I look at all the statistics up there, and then people who actually follow through and do that in the real world. It's almost like a follow-on from Pam's question. Like, so how does someone who's not a marketer look at the different things that are working in terms of connecting with audiences and also make sure that the message we're having connects in a way that it's not just, would you like to be more sustainable? Who in this room would say, no, not really, I don't care. But there's plenty of people in their real busy lives who might act that way. So how do we interpret that?
Do you want me to take that one? I think there is a measured intention to action gap that's known, and it's that, yes, I intend to. And that's true not just for behaving more sustainably. We find it in polling around election. People who are surveyed say one thing and do something else. And this is a growing awareness that we have of how that data collection works. I think what our data is showing is that there's a growing number of people who recognize my individual actions matter. Life is complex. I like to say, in the same way that any of us in our lives have to make trade-offs between, I'm going to remember to bring my bags or my bottle, or I'm going to buy this product or that product. There's 10 things we can do, 2 we may end up doing. but we're moving in a direction where we're making those choices more and more. That's what the data is showing, is people's willingness to try a few behaviors. And that's why the nudging, the psychological nudging and behavior change is, you're seeing an uptick in that by marketers when it comes to behavior change. I don't know if any of you have thoughts about that.
Well, I think we can add on to Liz's stats earlier as well, just saying, $2 extra, people are comfortably willing to pay that for sustainability. So
Mhm.
it's not a hard choice to choose between 2 bottles for for that kind of.
That's right. And that's why that category, there's always been people say, I'll buy the green product. That's what I'll do. And I wanted to find out, but what else might you do? And people are ready for you to ask them to help you.
I think we have to just make sure it's accessible to them, because if they
Yes.
say, I'm willing to make this choice, but I can't find it easily, so I'm not.
Right.
But if it's right in front of their face and they've already told somebody and they've told themselves they're going to make that choice, then the likelihood is that they're going to make that choice. But I think that's where we have to, on the other end, share these statistics and these trends with the gatekeepers, with the people who are buying at retail and building wine lists at restaurants, to say, hey, we have to make these wines available, or else they're not just, I always use the analogy, okay, let's say I want to buy Stone Street Cab at the steakhouse. I'm so excited to drink it. And you walk in and they don't have it on the list. You're not going to walk out and go to a different restaurant. You're going to buy something else. But if it was there, okay, well, so you can't just market directly to the consumer. You have to make sure that all of the stuff that we're marketing is available through all channels.
I would just add too, I think to your point of like, it's the age old question, my marketing's working, but I don't know what part is to figure out, it's through a digital lens. You can look through setting KPIs and saying, I know exactly the benchmarks I want to hit. And in the tangible world, that's a lot harder. So it is testing and learning and setting benchmarks that might be a little bit less tangible. So something like, I'm seeing an increase in bookings. I'm getting more people from a demographic that I've been, trying to attain. It might not be a concrete and you might not see it right away, but it's something that, you should try to, it sounds like we've all had plans that are 1 year out, 2 year out, 3 year out. So you should have that as well with your marketing plans.
Great. So one last question for each of you, since I know we're getting ready to close. Last comment. This isn't written down. I didn't prepare you for this, but what's your fast take or prediction of what's coming when it comes to storytelling? What's something you think is on the horizon for us?
Should I start?
Yeah, go.
Okay. What's on the horizon? I mean, I think this world is moving in a direction that's, it's fast paced. We're all getting a lot of content. We know, when we're talking about social and digital, content's really important for this next generation, and being as transparent as possible is really important. I think, something like a platform like TikTok, which is on everyone's mind. How do we do this? What works? What doesn't work? It's, what we're seeing working is brands that are learning how to use the tool in a way that's showing something that you can't otherwise get anywhere else. And I think that that's something with sustainability that we can learn and utilize. I think with, the progression of, I just went to a conference about women in marketing, and we talked a lot about AI and how a lot of those platforms that are getting built, if we don't really purposely build them with, with women in mind, with sustainability in mind, and we're feeding these tools with this information, we're in 10 years going to be not set up for success. So I think it's doing our homework, making sure you're using the right tools that are going to help you, and getting these people back that are, your loyal customers, and making sure that they stay with you.
Great. Richard.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, transparency is here, and I definitely think that is the future as well. I think, people want an authentic voice. They want to make sure that things are, they do their homework now. I think especially when it comes to sustainable practices, people want certifications. People want to see, I mean, we work with Domaine Biscay from Argentina, which is the first winery outside of the US to be ROC status, but they're biodynamic, they're organic certified. They have so many different, I guess, kind of badges of honor, I think we can call them. And they're like, that is something that people are really looking for. So that kind of transparency, I think, and being able to communicate that in a way that's fun, appealing, and I guess kind of reaches all audiences, whether it's age, sexual orientation, everything like that, really.
Yeah.
So.
And Anne, bring us home.
I think the availability of sustainable products in general and sustainable wine specifically is going to be the rule instead of the exception. I think we're headed in that direction. I think especially just seeing sustainability be at the top of everyone's minds. It's all these companies who have long been part of the problem and are now actively trying to be part of the solution. I look at my interactions with people like at Walmart and Amazon, and it's like, you know, they have massive, massive sustainability campaigns and DE&I campaigns and supporting, you know, organizations that 20 years ago that they wouldn't have caught dead supporting. So I think it's just going to be something that consumers are expecting of the products that they buy, and they're going to have to make a choice. And if they're not coming with us, then they're going to lose out pretty heavily in the long run, hopefully. So.
That's great. Thank you. And let's thank our panelists for a great conversation.